Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Tibra's Dead. My name is Whitney, and it's time for another Monday Musings. Now, last week was a rough one. I'm actually pretty pleased. One book we made great progress in. I struggled a little bit with the other two, but I was able to finish two books and read over 500 pages of another book, which is pretty solid, I would say. But I did have big plans. The week just kind of fell apart. So last Monday, did my video and such, and my husband finally hears back from the car dealership, or not the car dealership, the car shop, because his car broke down. The check engine light had come on. So it's been there for like a week and a half or something. And finally hear back from them, and it's going to be like over $6,000 to fix the car, which that car has a lot of miles. Like, I wanted to get through to next year, just get our finances in a little bit better shape, and then get a new car for him next year. Well, the universe has spoken. And so it's like, you know what? Like, that's too much to put in that car. And plus we think they're kind of fleecing us a little bit because, like, it is expensive. Like, it is expensive, but they're like adding on 9 hours of, shop time, like working time, which, based on everything my husband researched, like, it shouldn't be that high. It does take time, yes, but that's a lot more hours than what everything he found said. But then, regardless, the car is old. We were already planning on eventually getting a different one. It has a lot of miles, and so Monday he starts looking, because he used to work in auto parts, so he knows, good brands and such. And so he found a car that he wanted, has good gas mileage because he does commute and such. So he, inquired about it, and of course, immediately they jump on it. But the car was in El Paso, Texas, which we're in New Mexico. So it is a little bit of a drive, but it is doable. And he wanted this specific car. And so it all kind of happened really fast. And so Tuesday we ended up going down there. And, obviously kind of a big drive, and then spending the whole day. Luckily, we always know what we want, and we want this car. We know what we could afford and such. And it actually ended up not being through a dealership. It was a place called Drive Time, which is more for people like who have rough credit and such and are trying to get a car. And so we ended up going down there because they had the specific car we wanted, but because they're not like a dealership or anything, and our car does have a lot of miles and it's a little bit rough as far as like the paint job and such, they were like, yeah, we can maybe give you $100, but you'd be better off like selling it privately. So I hate driving in El Paso, and I was like, great. Like, now I have to drive a car back. Um, and so it was like, I'm not driving the Prius because it sits too low, and I already like don't like driving in El Paso traffic. So I ended up driving the new car back. But it was just a long day. Then, because now we had three cars, because I drove him down so we could get the car from the shop. So we had my car, then the Prius, which we drove to El Paso hoping we could trade it in. And then now we have the new car. Well, we don't, like, all cars are in the bigger city, not where we live. So it's like we left the Prius down at his brother's and we drove the other two cars back. And so Wednesday I drove him back down, anticipating picking up the Prius. Well, his nephew might be interested in it. And so like him and some of his buddies like will buy cars and kind of work on them and such. So he might be interested. So we left it down there thinking he would come and, they would talk about it this weekend. Of course, never did. And now he's like, I'll give you an answer by next weekend. And I'm like, I don't want to leave the car down there for another week. So anyway, my point is, Wednesday we went down, thinking we were going to pick up the Prius, which was just a kind of a waste of a trip for me because we didn't end up doing it. But we weren't down there very long because he had a dentist appointment back in the town where we live. So we were just there for a couple hours and then came back, but it was kind of a waste of a trip for me. And then because, change in routine, added stress because now I got to reconfigure the finances and such. I've just been kind of in a brain fog this past week. Oh, I haven't gotten a lot of reading done. I did end up finishing 2 books, and we read like over 500 pages of the Dungeon Crawler Carl book we're on, which is fantastic. So that was good. And last night I did start a different book. But the week just kind of fell apart. Didn't have a lot of reading time because going to different places and stressing out and such, and then brain fog. Excuse me. And then this weekend, I was like, well, I can kind of try to push, but I still kind of brain foggy. But I did push this weekend, and I was able to finish the 2 books. And we've been reading the Dungeon Crawler Caro book each night just because we really enjoy it. Saturday, I was really restless, so I was like, let's just go for a drive. So we did that, and was gone for a couple hours. So my point is, like, I did not get near as much reading as I could have or wanted to. Um, but still, considering the week I had, I'm actually pretty pleased with what I got done. So let's go ahead and get into that now. So I did finish Hungry by H.A. Swain. This was actually from my TBR game I played in January. I still had 2 books left that I didn't quite finish in January or February. And this was one of those. I did finish it. I ended up giving this a 3 stars. It's YA dystopian. It is very YA. I actually kind of like the premise of it. So the premise is you have this world, and basically there was kind of this big war. There was like this one food bank or seed bank rather. And so there's kind of a war over control, who had control over the seed bank. People were starting to starve. There wasn't enough food to go around. There's overpopulation, climate change, all that. And so this corporation ended up coming in, and they are control everything basically now. And so they're not the government, they're a corporation, but they made a deal with the government. The government was like, we'll provide nutrition for basically a family of 3. So if you have an extra child, they're not covered because they're trying to cut down on food population or overpopulation and such. And so you have this corporation, and our main character, her mom and dad both work for this corporation. Her mom's a scientist, and her dad does the tech stuff. Um, so basically, you get these inoculations, and they suppress your hormones, and so you're not wanting to procreate and such, and they suppress your appetite, and then you drink this synthetic drink that provides you all the nutrition you need. Well, there's this population, Thalia, which is our main character being one, who their hormones and their hunger isn't being suppressed. So yeah, they're getting all their nutrition, but they're hungry. Um, and so it basically ends up going on, and they end up going on the run. She meets this guy, Basil, and I like the overall premise of it. I really enjoyed that. I gave kind of Giver vibes, which Giver is one of my favorite books, only for an older audience. Basil, the romance in here, I almost wish it wasn't there at all. Like, I get why it was added, but they're very back and forth. And I think that was the big problem with one of the big problems with this book. It's very YA, very angsty and such, but some of the angst made sense. It wasn't just added just to add angst. It made sense, like her fights with her parents and such. But her and Basil going back and forth, I could understand in the beginning because she's a privy, what's called a privy, which is privilege. Never have to worry or anything. So there's the inner loop, which is where the privies live and such. There's the outer loop, which are a little bit more destitute and such, and then there's the hinterlands, which is just beyond. So basically, her and Basil end up going on the run. He brings her to this rebellion meeting, and it gets raided and such, and so they end up on the run. And they end up, going on this adventure. But I can understand some of the conflict in the beginning, but in the middle, if they had been more solid, I would have enjoyed that relationship more. But they still had random things in the middle, and this takes place over a week. essentially. Um, a little bit longer. I think it's a week until they get, farther out. But yeah, it was just like that romance element and the back and forth. I wish, a little bit of conflict at the beginning, then they're on the run for their lives and they're solid. And then the conflict at the end between them really made sense. And I really liked the ending. Well, not the ending itself, but like the last part of the book, part four. I really enjoyed where they were, how that played off like the corporation and such, and then the conflict between her and Basil in that setting made sense, and I did enjoy that. And then the ending itself was a big letdown. Like it just kind of doesn't really wrap anything up. It's very like vague. And so that was just kind of frustrating to me. But even though I gave it 3 stars and I didn't fully love it, this is actually one I'm gonna keep because I could see myself rereading this. Like I like the vibes of this a lot, and so the romance was a little rough, very YA as far as reading. The setting, there's a leader there at in part four that the way they were portrayed didn't really make a lot of sense in my mind. But past that, I really actually had a great time with this. So that was nice to read. Then we had my last book from that February game. So I did complete all those books. So I do get a reward now that I've completed all of them. And that's Portrait of a Thief by Grace DeLee. And I ended up going with 2 stars on this one. So I went in expecting like fast paced, like thrilling heist story. And the heist aspect is like blips in the story itself. And I was reading some of the other reviews after I finished it, and same thing, like it was not what was expected going in. Like you're going in, you're expecting this heist story. So you basically have this group of 5 Chinese Americans, college students, and they get approached, and there's 5 museums. There's that China, this person in China like contacts or reaches out to Will, who's our main character, and basically hires them. They want 5 Zodiac heads that were taken from the Summer Palace when it burned down and are in different countries. And so you have these 5 college students who don't really know what they're doing. And I did kind of like the way that was a little bit more realistic, but still, like, it was a lot of build up, and you didn't get a lot happening during the actual heist, and they were very repetitive. And it was very more about them reflecting on their culture, and each one has kind of a different story. So you have Daniel, who actually lived in China in Beijing as a kid, and then when his mom got sick, they moved to America. So he has memories growing up in China. You have Will and Irene, who are a brother and sister duo, and they've gone to like visit China and such. Then you have Lily, who is from Texas, has never been to China. Her parents don't like to talk about their past in China or anything like that. So she kind of has this disconnect from her culture. And then you have Alix, who basically grew up in New York, Chinatown. And so, like, she doesn't have, like, memories from China itself, but the culture of Chinatown, and her parents speak Cantonese and everything like that. So I like that you have different representations of that, but it was very reflective. Like they constantly were reflecting, and that also got very repetitive. Like I can understand that in the beginning, kind of reflecting about why they're doing this job and what it means to be Chinese and such, but it just got very repetitive and didn't really progress. Some of the way it was written was really confusing. Like it would be like, this is what happened, and then it would kind of like jump around and such. So it wasn't like straightforward writing. It was kind of confusing and like weird phrasing and such. So yeah, expectation versus what you got was completely different. I might have enjoyed it a little more. I don't mind like character driven stories and such, but I just I was expecting a fast-paced heist story, and that's not what you get. And like I said, it's a lot of reflection on their part, and then build up to the heists themselves. And then the heists themselves are like over like that. I did like what she did with the ending, though. I actually quite enjoyed that twist that it took. I did enjoy that, but yeah, it was kind of a big letdown. There's also romance, which I can understand, maybe the one couple, but like the other, it was just very unnecessary, and it was just like, come on, and she didn't devote enough time to it and really develop the romance to make you want to care about it. And so that was just kind of blah as well. Like, I wish there hadn't been romance in there at all. So it was not what I was expecting. It was very much a letdown. I did mark one spot because I really liked it. I think my favorite point of view, and that's also it. It had all 5 point of views, and so the flow of the story really suffered because of that. I did like Daniel's point of view in particular because his dad is part of the story, and you get more background on him, more development, and more depth there. Um, Alix as well, because she talks about her family and such, but the other, like, it's very vague about their family. And like Will and Irene, like, their family is friends with Daniel and his dad and such, so you would think they would have been a bigger part of it, but didn't develop that. Like, there just wasn't enough development for each of the characters. I wish he had focused. And I get, like, you're getting the different views because they all have different experiences and such, but yeah, I don't it just didn't really work, all the point of views, and she didn't develop them enough. So that was fine, but this one line, all parents leave their own scars, we're the ones that have to heal from them. I actually really like that line because it's true. Like, on one hand, you either see all your parents faults and such, and you have to realize, like, they're human, like, they're gonna have faults, and kind of forgive that. Or on the other hand, you see them as like these big heroes and such, and you have to realize they're human, like, they're gonna have faults and such. So I don't know, that line just kind of stuck me, but this was a big disappointment. But I did read it. I kept hoping it would get better, as like I said. It never really did. So there's that one. Then I have This Inevitable Ruin by Matt Dinniman. So this is the 7th book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl, the last one that's currently out. Book 8 is supposed to come out late spring, early summer, so I'm very much looking forward to that. And this is my least favorite Carl book so far. This is very much so, there's the faction wars on the floor they're on. They're on the 9th floor now, and so it's very much warfare forward, which is not my favorite. Of course, I still love Carl and Donut. I'm really enjoying that. I'm enjoying seeing, like, the other crawlers all kind of coming together in a way. And yeah, but it's just warfare, like, strategy and such is just not quite my thing. And so I am still loving it, though. It's really well written. So why this is going to be my least favorite Carl, it's definitely still going to get 5-star. We're just over 500 pages. We got to part 3 last night. We pushed, ended up staying up a little late, so we're now on part 3. And we have like 350 pages left to go, roughly. And so, yeah, we're making great progress. Like 500, I think we got to 519 last night. So that's a good chunk of book to read in a week. And just absolutely continuing to love this world with Carl and Donut. And so I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how this keeps progressing. And yeah, then we'll have to wait, which is going to be rough. But we have some other books we're going to read together and such, so it'll be fine. Hopefully that will keep us distracted until we get book number 8, and then we'll have to wait a while, obviously, for the next books. But I've absolutely loved this, and we are thinking of doing a reread already. of these books and listening to the audio because I've heard such great things about the audiobooks as well. And so we are thinking of doing a reread and listening to the audio of these books, which will be a lot of fun. But yeah, while not my favorite, Carl, definitely probably going to be my least favorite of the series. I love these characters and this world this author has created. So we read that this week, like I said, over 500 pages of that. And then last night I barely started Tarzan and the Lost Empire by Edgar Rice Burroughs. I only read the first 3 chapters, so I got to page 23 in here. And this one, so my next focus is going to be 3 books, and that's for Kim from Expedition Through Pages game. To fulfill those prompts, we have 3 prompts. I'm on Team Dryads. I'll, of course, leave everything linked down below. But this was for the prompt Last Chance Author. I read The Princess of Mars by this author and was not impressed. So far, like, obviously not very far in, only 23 pages, but so far, like, story-wise, I am enjoying this more. But I can definitely still see the problems. This was written in 1929, I believe, is when it said the hardcover came out. And so, yeah, this Ace edition follows the text of the first hardcover book edition originally published in 1929. So basically, you have this doctor who came to Tarzan and was like, my son's missing. Like, he went out on an expedition to find this lost empire, and the people he went out with came back without him. And so I want you to go find him, essentially. And so, yeah, I will say, like, you have the blacks. And they're kind of like the whites are their masters and such. So that's, but obviously when I'm reading an older book and such, I take account in of the times. And it's like, you kind of gotta have to take that into account and don't judge it based on today's standards, even though it's still not okay back then. You kind of have to take that into account. And so we'll see how it goes, if that's just kind of very minor or not. But yeah, barely started this, but that's a priority. I'm also going to be reading, I have it as a digital book, and we're supposed to read the solar system. So I'm reading a book for Uranus, and I'm reading Beyond Uranus by Stewart, Bruce, and Nigel Moreland, I believe are their authors' names. I did try to start reading it when we were at getting the car, but they were actually really quick. So I'm just going to restart that over. So we have that one. And then I also have Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, which is for a time period I would like to visit. This is like 1920s jazz age. And so those are the 3 priorities to get those done this week so I can log them for my team. And this one, I actually do have the audio book. And since I am going down to do receipts, take my husband to pick up the car and do receipts and such, I might listen to this one, but I'm thinking I'd rather read this one physically. And I also have the audio book For Whom the Bell Tolls by Jaysea Lynn. And so this one I might actually start tomorrow and start the audio book while I do receipts, and that way I can read this one physically. But we'll just have to see, because this one is obviously more of a priority, and since I do have the audiobook, we'll see. But I'm leaning towards listening to this one as audiobook, starting that tomorrow, and reading this one physically once I get to it, which hopefully I can start this tomorrow as well. This one and Beyond Uranus are both like barely 200 pages, so that shouldn't be a problem. So we'll work on those. Those are the main focus this week. And then I also want to read my family book club, which is Taurus Season by Brynne Weaver. This is another priority. I really wanted to do my next role for read, which the book for that I already have picked out. I have my locations, my snacks, everything picked out, and that's Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. And so this one I would really like to get to this week, but probably will be towards the end of the week. we'll have to see. So that's the other one I really want to get to. And then we have three others that are kind of on my radar. I talked about these two last week. So, And Now Back to You by B.K. Borison. Not on a TBR at all, just a recent purchase, and I really want to read it. And then we also have Half His Age by Jennette McCurdy that I really, really want to read. And then another book from my actual TBR is The Everlasting by Alix E. Harrow. I love this author's writing, and so this is on my TBR, and I'm just like, based on this past week and my stress level and such, I want books that I think I'm just going to really dive into and enjoy, and this is definitely one of those. And so, yeah, that's kind of the lineup, and we'll just have to see what I get to this week. But like I said, priority wise, it's those three books for Kim's Game plus Taurus Season for my family book club, and Born a Crime and For When the Bell Tolls. This one I'll probably listen to on audio, and this one I just want to do because I really enjoy doing that role for reading. So we'll just have to see how it goes. Like I said, the three that I just showed you are more probably just not gonna happen. But a girl can hope, you know. Where the others, I definitely think I'll at least start this week, and I'm hoping we can finish this Inevitable Ruin this week as well. So we'll just have to see how it goes. Of course, come back next week to see what happens. I'm always just so hopeful. There's just so many books I want to get to, and then life happens. So there's that, but I am pretty hopeful I can get some reading in, especially with the audiobook, and those two short books, and then some fast-paced, fun ones that I should be able to just dive in and not think too hard. So we'll just have to see, but I'm really looking forward to getting into some of these, and I'm really hoping I can get that Roll for Read video done, or filmed this week. It'll probably come out next week if I am. But at this point, I just kind of want to enjoy myself. So we'll just see kind of where the wind takes me. Anyway, I would love to know if you've read any of these books, or if you're interested in any of them, or what you're currently reading. If you just want to let me know you're here and you're helping to support the channel by commenting, you can always leave a rabbit or any type of animal emoji, maybe a cat for Princess Donut because she is awesome. One of my all-time favorite characters. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.